It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do change. Change.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Cafe Show. I'm Barbara Jean.
And I'm Cheryl Rogers, and we're coming to you from Ontario, Canada. Barbara is more specifically in Toronto, and I'm in Cambridge. And so we like to acknowledge that these lands we work, live, and play on are the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. This includes the Métis, Inuit, and all other Indigenous people. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there's still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination towards our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. By making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Well, today we have a remarkable guest. Samuel Lopez is a two-spirited man, and he originated in El Salvador, Central America. He's the son of a Baptist minister and grew up in the midst of a civil war. Now, he left his homeland before being recruited to join the army and to fight in that civil war. He's lived in Mexico City, Montreal, and came to Toronto in 1987, now known as Toronto, to finish his high school at École Secondaire Étienne Brûlé. He studied theology before joining the International Development Studies program at U of T, and he's been a leader since childhood. He is a social activist. He is a person that really is making a difference in the world. He is an interpreter, translator, and a documentarian. He has created some great films, and he has been met through his commitment to activism, through community mobilization for the betterment of newcomers, HIV, and 2S LGBTQ plus populations locally and internationally.
Wow.
And proud of being founder of the Latino group Hola. He is a founding member of the HIV Prevention Program at the Center for Spanish-Speaking Peoples and Latinos Positivos. And he serves as a drug expert at the Ontario Harm Reduction Network and is a board member of the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation. Yay, Samuel. And now let us have a little introduction to Samantha.
Can I just say, wow?
Yes, wow. Samuel is amazing. And here's Samantha.
Trench, and I come from the house of the Trench, and I'm proud to be Salvadorian, proud to be a fag, proud to be a drag queen, proud to be a female impersonator, and proud to be Latino. This music is North American music. However,
well, and here is Samuel, Samantha.
Welcome. My goodness, what a bio. I was just listening to it and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is one person doing all that, that's fabulous.
It
And I
sounds like a
edited
lot,
some
doesn't
out.
it?
It does. Doesn't it feel like a lot?
Yeah, it sounds like
It's a
a
lot.
long bio.
Well, you're obviously very active in the community in so many different ways. Yeah. So, Samuel, tell us about growing up in El Salvador. How was that for you?
I barely grew. I stay small. Or what were you asking?
I love that.
Well, it was from as far as I remember, there were a lot of challenges. There were a lot of challenges. My father is an indigenous man. My mother comes from an impoverished family, and I grew up in um, you know having both of them working outside of the house. So I spent a lot of time by myself or with my brothers at home, and so I had to discover a lot of things at my early age on my own,
Mm-hmm.
um, and didn't know uh, what to do with information that came to my, that came across. Uh, I, I was 6 years old, and I had a lot of things in my mind, but I didn't have someone handy at the moment that I had a question. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and I was bullied a lot because of it. Just like in English, I have an accent. In Spanish, I can't roll my R's.
Mm-hmm.
So I was bullied for that all the time. And
Oh.
people would ask me, say such word. And I would just change the word and say a different word that means the same thing, but without
Mm-hmm.
an R. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but that didn't stop me from talking or from speaking. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I have always been to this day conscious that I have that um, difficulty with my tongue,
Mm-hmm.
for which I had a surgery. I also was very attached to grandma, my maternal grandmother, who lived with us, and not the same with my paternal, my indigenous grandmother. She was very secretive, like she didn't share a lot, and she's also a survivor of genocide. In
Mm-hmm.
the 1930s, there was a massacre that huge. More than 30,000 indigenous people got murdered in 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Wow.
intergenerationally, I'm able to relate to genocide in that sense because I never learned my language. It's not until this year that I
Mm-hmm.
started learning Nahuatl. Uh, and I remember hearing grandma talking to her sister in a different way, but I didn't know more than in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Uh,
amazing. How
yeah,
many languages do you speak?
I speak a couple of European languages, but I don't speak any indigenous languages. And so there are 200 survivors of that speak Nahuatl as an original language back home.
Okay.
And so there's a campaign that the rest of us should learn the language because after they're gone, no one
Yeah.
else knows the language.
Keep
And
it
it's not
alive.
1932 anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so even the government is being promoting the language in through the Minister of Education. But I
Mm-hmm.
speak English, French, Spanish, and I
Right.
understand a few others. I
Mm-hmm.
understand you, for example.
Thank
So,
goodness for that. Or do you really?
but yeah, I I was very committed to
the work at church.
Mhm.
Being the son of a minister, I had to also have some sort of leadership, get engaged in the activities in the church with the children, with the youth, and so on. uh, Set an example. But I was a terrible kid. I didn't like being quiet or calm. I have
Mm-hmm.
always been very hyper. Since the
Mm-hmm.
age of 1, I have taken medication for that.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm.
and so uh, made it difficult for others to handle my spirit. And I loved it. It was like it was a tool, I had
Mm-hmm.
to uh, to to be unique.
Mm-hmm.
But during the Civil War in El Salvador in the 1980s, the Civil War sponsored by Ronald Reagan at the time, um, that became a challenge because you
Mm-hmm.
can't be as so flamboyant and rude or funny in the midst of a war, like of during curfews going to knock at people's doors and run. That is scare people. But that's a
But you
child is
did.
a child during a war, so you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
play either with a gun or with
Mm-hmm.
bombs or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right?
The games that
Yeah.
you used to play before the war. Is that what you're saying?
Say that again.
Those were the games you played before the war.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And growing up, sorry, Barbara, I'm so intrigued. Did you feel different? Did you know that you were different? I know you knew that you were unique. You were talking about that with your energy and how you use that as a tool. Did you feel different though from
Always,
yeah?
always. And my family fought against those feelings. I i embraced them. I didn't mind them. I um i knew there was someone else inside of me, that I couldn't stop from being, from existing, uh no matter what efforts I made.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there were other things that like, for example, my parents were poor in their lives, but I didn't have the same challenges that they did. So, for example, my mother, being the daughter of a shoemaker, she didn't have shoes, but I always did. But I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to walk barefoot on outdoors, on gravel, for example. And so I would go and practice. I would go to whatever I see rocks, and I would remove my shoes and I start practicing because I wanted to fit in with my environment. All the
Mm-hmm.
other kids didn't have shoes, and they could run on top of, they could run everywhere, and I couldn't. And it's not that I was delicate. I just had some privilege,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, you did for sure.
Hmm.
Deja, can we roll that first, or I guess what's the second clip now? And then I've got a couple more questions for someone.
Um, straight like Latino guys always ask me things like, since when are you gay, or how do you find out you were gay, or things like that. It's like, how since day and night are they straight? I think, okay, that's right. Sometimes I say, I'm more than a man than anyone else because I could be who I want to be. I do what I want to do and still be myself. Still play the roles I always play without having to hide them. I I have met people here, in Central America, in South America, who call themselves hetero, and I'm talking about men who say, "Well, I'm straight," but they wouldn't mind fucking you. So,
Oh, in Latin America, it's all the time like that.
So I realized that there's a great amount of bisexualism in our countries, but as long as you're top, you're a man. So that those are the things that I was struggling with.
So I love that. I love that. When did you know you were gay? Well, when did you know you were straight? I I,
Yeah.
l- I love that.
Do you like
Did
garlic?
do I like garlic?
Yes.
I do. Yes.
How do you know? You tried it, right? You can't say that you don't like garlic without trying it.
That's a
Garlic is
very good
just,
point.
You're so
yeah.
funny.
People are, oh, can you remove the onions for a second? Try it. Then you can say, I don't like it or I don't want it.
Mhm.
Exactly. Now, did you have a challenge? Like, did your father have a challenge being a Baptist minister with you being gay or two-spirited? Was that a problem for the church at all?
It was a problem. He didn't have a problem being a minister. He just had a problem with me not becoming one.
Oh, he wanted you to be a minister. Okay.
And so did I. But it was going to be too difficult if I was made to the image of the same creator that created my father, and so I didn't see why I had to be treated or acknowledged as different.
Mhm.
And it has
Beautiful.
been a challenge all my life because I work with the church. I do development work back home, and
Hmm.
uh, and I'm always questioned by who the minister in charge, you know, who was here last night. The boys were here last night. It's like, of course, all the youth comes and visit and chat with us, and so what's your real question, right? Uh, but it's it's interesting because there are so many behaviors that we don't question when we see a man and a woman together, even if they're not married per se, right? And the church otherwise would challenge that. But uh, someone like me who's not sinning or doing anything against anyone's will, uh, my leadership is questioned because I'm able to, feel comfortable with myself, and people are comfortable with myself. There's only the ones in power or the ones in leadership that it is the masculinity is
Mm.
challenged, right?
Yeah.
Um, the women don't have problems with that,
No.
right? But the minister of the church, what are others going to think if I have Sam working here? Uh,
Mm.
and that makes it difficult for uh, to fit in society. Never mind the church, but society in general, because at one point I have to decide: do I for example, do I want this job or do I want to be happy?
Mm.
Right?
Mm.
And
It's a
so,
great question.
so nowadays it's the same thing as when I say, do I do this voluntarily or do I do it for a pay? If I do it for pay, I have to do it the way I'm told.
Mm. Mm.
If I do it
Good
voluntarily,
point.
Mm. Yeah.
you know
Well,
you,
my question is, do you feel more female than male or both? Like, do you feel like you're one and not the other, but you play a role in society, or do you feel like you're both?
no, I feel pretty balanced. In childhood, the problem was that I was feeling Samantha. I was feeling Samantha, and I couldn't get rid of it, right?
Mm.
No matter what I try. Uh, then, in terms of sexuality or having sexual relationship with other men. I, it happened in the church, right?
Mm,
But it was uh, either um, as part of my discovery, or it was abuse. And
mhm,
so then it became difficult for me to figure out what was going on, because I wasn't sure if that felt good, or
mm,
if it was a good thing to do.
mhm.
Uh,
How old were
but
you?
sorry.
How old were you at that time?
Oh, I'm like a minor. I was not even a teenager when
Mm,
I realized that I I had features that were being challenged by others, by family, by the church, by the
mhm,
school, and so they would introduce me, or uh, pair me with girls, so that I would start going out with them. And I had girlfriends. Women like soft men anyway. Uh, so that was not a problem. The problem was that was it. It was
mhm,
not going to be what my parents wanted out of me. And um and so it was very confusing. By the age of 14, I didn't know what was going on.
mhm,
I wanted to die. I wanted
Oh,
I asked God to, that if I couldn't change, uh that he should take me,
mhm.
uh,
Because you didn't feel accepted.
because I couldn't change, because I couldn't change, and I needed to change. I needed to do it. I needed to be a man,
Mm,
right? And
mhm,
so and not feel attractive to other men,
mhm,
and uh, and that was impossible. It was in my nature, and and so it I think that I still grew up repressing a lot
mm,
of that identity of mine.
yeah,
That
probably.
even if I'm used to myself,
mm,
I don't have a full expression of the self as it could have been.
mm, mhm.
Mm, wow. Deja, can you show that next clip? Uh, and we'll probably after that, we'll go into our commercial break and then come back and ask some questions about it. It's not playing. Oh, there's something wrong with the clip.
Mhm,
Um, so as we're moving along here with um, you talked in the film, Samuel and Samantha, you talked about how these there were men who you would go out and they would be dancing with you. As long as you were dressed as Samantha, then these straight men were happy to dance with you and spend time with you. But if you went out to another club dressed in jeans and boots and, just as Samuel, then there was reservation on their part. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that felt like?
Yeah, what I'm talking about in the film is something that happened in Toronto, actually.
Okay.
Uh, I was uh, uh, I was studying at U of T International Development, and by then I'm comfortable with my sexuality, and Samantha comes out fully dressed,
Yeah.
and at that time I was very much involved in arts, like in filmmaking. I'm surrounded by a lot of artists and a groupie, right? So
Yes.
within that group, everything was fine, right? But of course, uh, when I was earlier saying, the challenge to masculinity is for a man to dance with another man, but there's nothing. It's okay for them to dance with Samantha because it's Samantha. But for me, what it was is that I'm always both. I'm never just one. And
Exactly.
so maybe I felt attracted to the men I was dancing with. The fact that I respected that uh, we were only going to dance is is uh is just as simple as them knowing that all they're gonna do is dance, right? But that is more difficult for a straight man to come and dance with Samuel than dancing with Samantha.
Let's play the clip now. It looks like Deja's got it working.
Very
So we'll
hard.
watch that clip.
Living in with the kind of music I like, with the kind of people I like, speaking my own language, hanging out with my people. But who are my people? They are all these. It's not a question of being heterosexual or homosexual, but the fact that they don't accept me as a homosexual, and I do not like that kind of machismo from those Latinos who live in this city and they see everything around them. I'll tell you an experience. I had a party in this room for my birthday. My brother and I were in drag. Every man that was here was dancing with me, cha cha, salsa, merengue, cumbia, everything. They would touch me, grab me, anything, you mentioned it, it happens. Then we go to another party, and I was wearing my boots, my army boots, jeans, leather jacket, and none of these men would dance with me. And so I was just like a big joke for them, like the entertainment of the evening.
Well, you looked fabulous.
I did. I know I had that lambada dress that was actually was a dress that was made for a guy from Colombia, and uh, another Latina guy. So what's my point?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great clip. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and
yeah.
then we're going to come back and we're going to expand that conversation a little bit. You're watching Spirit Cafe show on the New Thought Media Network, and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And we're back. This has been
Mhm.
a great conversation.
Mhm.
Okay, so what do you think's going on with some of these gentlemen? Pardon me, Samuel, when they're a little hesitant to dance with you when you're dressed as a man. Like, what's the deal with that? Do you think?
It's the heteronormality, as plain as simple. It's interesting because gender and sexuality interchange, right?
Mhm.
So it's what if they end up liking it,
Mm.
Oh no, not that.
right? So you don't want that to happen, and God forbid. So and I think it's, is for me, what was difficult at that time is that they know me. These people knew me. They were no strangers. They knew me, and I felt like it was mockery, that they were
Mm.
dancing with a clown,
Oh,
right?
Mhm.
mm,
Because otherwise, it's like, no, I'm not gonna dance with you, but
Mhm.
I will dance with you whether I'm Samuel or I'm Samantha. I will still dance with you,
Mm. Mm.
right? So
So when you're Samantha, these are the same people that will dance with you, right? When you're Samantha, but not when you're Sam, and you're the
yeah,
same person, and they treat
exactly,
you differently, even though
yeah,
they know you, they know who you are.
and that's because I was hanging out with a lot of stray guys at
Mhm.
that
mhm.
time. I was comfortable with that, uh, but there was never
Are
any
you sure they were
intimacy,
straight?
like dancing, like touching each other, right? Like,
Mm.
so uh,
Maybe
that
their
was
leanings were
them.
such that they felt uncomfortable because of their leanings.
Exactly.
I,
Uh,
yeah.
they didn't like what they liked.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned the heteronormative thing, and I think, we definitely live in a world where that, we'll call it normal. I think the word normal is an interesting word because it doesn't say anything
Who
because
wants to
there
be
is no
normal?
such thing
Who
as
wants
normal.
to be normal?
Right? To me, normal, that means mediocre. It doesn't mean,
Mhm.
standing in who you are. And you, Samuel, are not mediocre. You're fierce. Like you stand in who you are and you live that fully and completely. And I totally respect that about you because people see you and they do know what they're getting because you're
Mhm.
really clear about what you stand for. And I
Mhm.
absolutely love that about you. That's what makes you most interesting, I think, is that but I think, when we look at the world overall, there's a lot of conversation right now about people who are transgender or who are drag queens, and there's a lot of hate going on. How do you manage that in the midst of all of the stuff that's going on in our world today?
Well, I when I brought Samantha to the public, I did it mostly thinking of this population, this demographic, thinking I don't know what I'm talking about unless I experience it myself.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so I got dressed up and went to a march, demonstration that was going from Church and Wellesley to 51 Division,
Mhm.
and march in drag. And it was uncomfortable, it was painful, it was difficult, it was scary because if we had to run, I'm wearing high heels, and also gave me the perspective of what it's like to be in that position. And so I was able to experience firsthand society as Samantha, for the sake of helping defend the rights of transsexual or
Transgender.
transvestites, because at that time, and I'm talking about early 90s, uh, Toronto, it wasn't made the way it is. It took
Mhm.
a
Yeah.
few of us to build it. And like my brother was a key person in helping the Latin community in Toronto. He worked for Extra Magazine. His name
Hmm.
is Mario Lopez. And so we used that influence to get, an advertisement, or to get favors, right? That uh, we felt that we were in disadvantage with. And
Mhm.
so the thing with what's going on with trans is that with the Latino group Hola, uh, a lot of people that came to the group wanted to express their sexuality through dressing up, and it was a place for them to come out. It was the place where they probably dress up for the first time, uh, and so it has been important for many to have this group existing, because it has uh, allowed them to have a place that they can call home, right? A
Mm.
place
Right.
where there are other people that are okay with you, other people that are like you, and it's a
Where they feel safe.
and they feel safe.
Yeah.
Ola has been around for more than 30 years, and uh, they, very more than once a month, they have events to raise funds for different causes. One of the big causes is to participate in the uh, gay pride parade. And
Hmm.
so the queens come and do their lip syncing, and they get tips. And from those tips, they, put money together and save. So when June arrives, we have to have the best float. We're Latin, so we have to have the best float. And also for different causes, like the Toronto People with AIDS Foundation has been a recipient many times, like Casey House and many others, of the funds that are raised by the Latino drag queens in Toronto. And it's really interesting because even the TCOT uh,
Hmm.
has always had, like, for a long time, there's a lot of Latina drag queens that have been in TCOT. And to be in TCOT, you have to be able to raise thousands of dollars for a cause.
Okay.
So the contribution of drag queens in the city has been important, and the contribution of Latina drag queens in the city has been not always acknowledged, and they have participated a lot. What is happening now, and how Samantha fits in reality, Samantha doesn't come out that often. So I don't face uh, the frequent discrimination or abuse, or I don't put myself at the risk of being stigmatized. If
Hmm.
Samantha comes out, it comes out with Samuel, or she comes out to a particular event. Uh,
Mhm.
but it's not that I spent the whole night in drag, and who knows what happens to me by 6 a.m. You don't know where I am.
Mhm.
Those days are gone. But when I was so into it, in the expression, trying to bring this other being out, uh, I would be there day and, well, not day and night, but almost.
Mhm.
And then it was difficult because you meet, because I didn't stick to Church and Wellesley. I would go to different places in the city, and uh, I was never pretending to be a woman, right? If I did, I would have done a good job and just behave like that. But it was never my intention. So that bringing Samantha outside the gay neighborhood was challenging at times too,
Of
because then
course.
otherwise it's someone who's trying to who's pretending to be a woman. So it's to the eyes of the beholder, right? uh, and
It's a
sometimes people,
perspective.
people that want to talk to you, people actually are interested in you because they're actually thinking that maybe you are a woman, and it's not always safe to have conversations with them, right?
Mm, mm,
Yeah, there's a lot of violence
mhm.
in the. I have a good friend in Calgary who was beaten within an inch of his life just for
and,
walking down the
and we have
street.
lost people that have been killed,
Yeah.
right? And we have people that have been killed because they're trans, people that have been killed because they're gay, and so the stigma, there's also internalized stigma, right?
Of course, yeah.
Within the community, uh,
Mm,
for the Latino group Ola to exist, it took a lot of steps to fit in the mainstream,
Yeah,
to be able to be part of the same community that everyone else was part of,
mm,
rather than just being that flamboyant Latin boga person, right?
mm,
That is like,
mm,
that's what I mean when I say it's like a circus where you're
mm,
just being seen for all the feathers that you have on the outside, but you could not get on the street and walk and
mm,
just go home,
mm,
right?
right.
You have to
mhm.
take a cab, or you have to have you have to be aware of the challenges that are
Right.
in society
Yeah.
for someone who is who fully or freely identifies their expression of sexuality.
Right.
Yeah.
And you mentioned do you say hola or hola?
Hola.
Hola. You mentioned that it took a long time to be part of the mainstream, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because you keep referring to the Latino transsexual transgender society, and so do you feel that are accepted in the general gay population?
We have grown. We are many. You can't stop us. We are
Mm,
unstoppable.
mm,
And that's the only reason why. But when we were only five, that
mhm,
wasn't fun. Or at one point, there were like three of us that would go to a party organized by the White Fox. And
mhm,
these are the three Latina queens that are always there. But when we wanted to have our own identity, our own way of expressing ourselves, that's when things became more challenging, because it's like we're taking space. And it's like,
mm,
yes, we are.
mm,
We
mhm,
are,
And you should.
right?
mm, mm.
Uh, and
And that was
so,
threatening for them.
yes, it was like, and at the end, it's what you see is a very good synergy happening in community when it comes to the Latina queens, because they are now they're all admired for their challenges and after seeing their contributions. But before,
Mm,
like you're competing with each other kind of thing, and
mhm,
not in a competition in which you end friends at the end. It's a
Mm.
competition where I am better than you,
right.
or who is this one that just step in.
Mhm.
uh Look, this is Mia.
There's Mia. She's back.
when when it comes to being harassed or fitting in, it's not always physical. It's sometimes is in how in structures. For
Mm,
example, I do a lot of HIV work,
mhm,
and I I I go oftentimes, m- more often than not. I My knowledge goes to international conferences on HIV and AIDS. And so, but when I apply for a scholarship, I need a letter from someone to back up my work, right?
Mm.
As I'm not associated by employment with an organization,
Mm.
I have to figure out who am I going to ask a letter of support from. And
Mm.
so I'll go to whatever I'm volunteering or something, and that may not work either. So
Mm.
this year I'm apply for a scholarship to go to Munich in July, and I I went to where I felt safe asking for a letter, and I didn't get a reply. So at the
Mm.
very last minute, I found someone else to write me a letter, and I actually got a scholarship, and I'm going to show a film, right? So when I tell the group that didn't support me with the letter, I hope that they remember that they didn't,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Absolutely,
Right.
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so also, uh, I've been doing some work with a group that has the word cafe in it as well, from the ACE Committee of Toronto. And we were going to have a training recently, and the training was going to take place at Casey House, and they were going to give us some munchies. And when I heard that they were from Tim Hortons, I said, well, Tim Hortons is the sister company of Burger King, which supports Israeli military by providing free food and drinks. And they work under the name of Restaurant Brands International, right? Popeyes as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
And so I was trying to get the leadership of the people training us to be sensitive to uh, what's happening to the Palestinian people. And it's not something that I thought it would develop in a discussion, because a
Mm.
fact is a fact. People are being killed, period.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
it's not a discussion. It's like it's a fact.
Mm.
And what I got as a reply was someone in a position of power who was training us as Zvika Wittenfeld, who just said, I'm Israeli. And I said, well, I said to myself, more of a reason. So it's much easier for you to understand. And it became very conflicted. And
Mm.
so I said, I need to be in a safe space and contribute a, with what I can, where I feel that my contribution is, uh, you know, acknowledged or is wanted. But I'm not
Mm.
going to be somewhere where I'm not wanted. Let them drink Tim Hortons and carry on with your karma. I'm not going to be part of that,
Mm.
right?
I think yeah, it's really important. One of the things that I really appreciate about you, Samuel, is that number one, you're well educated and you do have a good sense of what's going on in the world as a social activist, and that you stand for your commitments,
Mhm. Mhm.
that when something goes against your values, you stand for what you believe. You don't actually bend and go, oh, well, I'll just sweep it under the
I'll make an
carpet this
exception
time.
here, or
Yeah, I'll
it's
just
like,
make it.
no, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's,
Good for you.
I mean, having lived a civil war, coming from a history of genocide
Yeah.
in my family, struggling with my sexuality, living with HIV, uh, those are facts.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I will always stand in solidarity with any resurgence
Mm.
of movements that are against genocide, indigenous people in Canada. I'm not going. I'm not. I don't have a different history. It's
Mhm.
the same, and I cannot be a hypocrite.
Mhm.
So of course, when we started Latinos Positivos or the Latino group Ola, it includes blacks. It includes indigenous people.
Mhm.
Latino is the word that we have used to identify a large group of people. But I'm proud of being indigenous, and I'm proud of being part of Latinos Positivos, part of the Latino group Hola. And other indigenous people are part of these groups as well. They're Latin America, or Aviala, the south of this continent. Uh, we speak a common European language, Spanish, other than Portuguese, but we are black, we are yellow, we are white, we are
Mhm.
red,
So you're
you know.
diverse, it's inclusive.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
so of course each of these countries separately have issues of racism, sexism,
Mhm.
but when we come here to the mainstream, we're all Mexicans. That's what I tell them. We're all Mexicans. So why do we have to look at each other as different? If
Yeah.
to the one that it matters, we're all the same Mexican person,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's uh, it's not easy because you come from a different reality, like a civil war, and suddenly I'm in Toronto, and it wasn't until I came to Canada that I actually realized that I come from an indigenous family,
Mhm.
and having to go back in feeling that I have missed so much by not knowing earlier, uh, made me study and learn more about myself and about my culture, and feel and I not so much looking for a place to belong, but just to know who I have been, who I am, and where I'm going.
I love
Mhm.
that. I love that. And I think the idea of belonging is such an important point to bring up because I think that's where everyone is feeling othered.
Mhm.
It's that idea that who I am is not acceptable in mainstream, like that comes right down to the basics. Where do I belong? And you mentioned in your movie, feeling most comfortable in the Latin community. Of course you do. That makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
That's, what you were raised with. And the expansion of that belonging as you are here in Toronto. How long have you been here now?
Oh my God, I've been here for decades. I just get my accent. I've been here forever.
I love it. I kept mine too.
So did I.
I
Cheryl
noticed.
kept hers. Well, it's what I love about this conversation is that it brings to light the journey of number one, a refugee coming into the country, an indigenous and gay person, but also the fact that you're two-spirited. Like that idea of having Samantha as a part of you, and then all of the issues going on right now with drag queens and stuff. I think there's a lot of work to be done where we all begin to feel like we do in fact belong because
Mhm.
we belong to each other, whether we
Mhm.
like it or
Yeah.
not. We
We're all
belong to each
connected.
other.
Yeah,
I think that most
absolutely.
of
Yeah,
the work has to be on stigma
I
Yeah,
and
agree.
discrimination,
yeah.
because for example, there's a stigma against people who use substances, the people
Hmm.
who use drugs.
Yes.
So if someone suddenly dies, did they overdose,
Mm,
right? Rather than saying,
Mm.
mm,
is it possible that they overdosed, right? Like
mm,
Like what
mm,
mysterious.
happened? Yeah.
Like,
mhm.
oh my God, did they, no, it goes more with the stigma of gossiping. Did they overdose? Is it
Yes.
possible that they party too much because this and that happened to them? And
Yeah.
that that exists, has existed for a long time. When my brother died, that's exactly what people were asking. Did he overdose? And the fact is that he didn't, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
so
And how
uh,
does that, what difference does that make?
if
Right?
the
What
person is already
difference?
gone, regardless.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so why
But it could
ask?
make a difference if we
Yeah.
actually talk about it openly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That could make a difference, because if the person had, let's say, a heart attack, and they because of a particular substance that they were using, let's talk about it so that it doesn't happen to someone else again.
Without it being a stigma,
Education.
right?
Exactly.
You know, I facilitate a victim empathy program, and part of that is the stigma that comes with, you know, somebody who's being raped. How were they dressed? Well, what difference does it make? Does that mean they deserved to be raped?
Well,
right?
they provoked me.
Well, yeah, exactly. You're blaming the victim for the crime, and it's the same thing with drugs. You know, for me, it's like, okay, so what does that mean? Because they took drugs, they deserve to die?
Yeah.
And
Right?
what's fascinating about the drugs too is that a lot of the addiction right now has been created by our medical profession by giving out opiates like they're candy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden realizing, whoa, wait a minute, these are addictive. Let's cut everybody off.
Yeah.
Well, now you have an addicted person who's still in pain. Like the whole idea of stigma is so huge, and
Can be a whole nother show on its own.
we
Yeah,
could do a
you know
show on
that
stigma.
I'm part of something called the Human Library. And in the Human
Love
Library, we do basically what we're doing right now. People ask difficult questions. I'm the book. What I'm willing to share, I share. But the idea is to remove prejudice, so that you ask questions the way you want to, and you let the book share that chapter. Because,
I love it.
for example, when talking about HIV, they asked me, for example, do you tell people that you have HIV? Right? And then in the answer, they realize that maybe the answer I give them is not what they were expecting. But the idea is, don't judge me. Just I'll give you the information, but don't judge me. This is the reality of one individual, one book that wants to be humane. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Love that.
Well, and here we are coming to the end of our hour already. Like
I don't believe you.
I know, it's so fast. It's just amazing to me. Deja, can we show the dancing clip before we break? Because man, you got moves. I tell you, this girl can dance. I love it.
It hurts, believe me.
Are the shoes? Is it the shoes that hurt?
No. It's not there
No,
where it
there's
hurts.
look how beautiful she is.
And they, you know, that's Carlos Puebla. Whatever. But
that's my brother.
I like you, and I believe it.
That's your brother? All right.
In a lot of the things that go in there, but there's oh my gosh, there's something about supporting and defending.
My hair is
Cuban
longer.
Revolution and another thing.
Yeah.
That's my own hair, eh? It's not a wig.
Yes, I know.
Wow,
It's
that's
beautiful.
I
amazing.
remember talking once with some
And those are
Beautiful.
real pearls too, okay?
good Cuba has done in many things during the revolution.
I love it. I love it. Well, Samuel, Samantha.
What about me trying to make money for a living? Let me tell you, honey, we all deserve it.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'll tell you, you are beautiful inside and out.
Absolutely.
As a
Both
man
of you.
and as a woman, both of you are gorgeous. And I'm really grateful that you said yes to this interview today. And there's so much more we could talk about. So we're going to have to bring you back. No question about that. Thank you, Samuel. And Cheryl, is there any final comment? You've got about 15 seconds, probably.
Just to say thank you. I'm so grateful. And definitely the conversation needs to continue so that, more people do have these conversations, like you say.
Exactly.
It needs
Well,
to
we'll be continuing this. You know, our other host, Marg, was a little under the weather today and couldn't join us, but we send her lots of love. And thank you all for watching. Thank you, Samuel, Samantha, for being our guest today. You are remarkable. And thank you, Cheryl, for being my sister from another mother. Love you,
And
dear.
thank you, Barbara Jean.
Have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.
Bye.
Expect a